What's up, YouTube? Welcome to today's video where we are going to go over a long-ass question that I often get, and it is, can you do 5 ways without a headhunter? Now, that is something that I actually didn't really know, and I was testing it out, and things weren't looking very good at the start, let's just say. So let's just say I first started off, I tried it out with just 2 inspired learnings. This is what it looks like. It's kind of passable, right? And I noticed something bad happened. My resetters died, so yeah, there was no more mob spawning, but you can see I have like 14 buffs. It wasn't looking too good. So can you actually run 5 waves without the headhunter? And the answer is surprisingly yes, but you do have to adjust your method for doing it. And I'm going to go over exactly what you need to do. I'm going to go over the different things I ended up trying, and I'm going to go over what actually works the best. And lastly, I'm going to go over what are the budget options you could use in order to do 5 ways without a headhunter. Now, doing 5 ways without a headhunter is really, really important because right now, headhunters are insanely overpriced. If you look right here, I was actually shocked. It was 175 plus divines. How is that even possible? Well, mobs don't drop any loot. That's why. So, great job. GGG for making it even more unobtainable than before. 175 divines is probably one of the highest prices it's ever been. And lots of people are pretty much unable to afford a headhunter or mageblood due to the sky-high cost. And just to give a little bit of perspective of how rare mageblood and headhunter currently is, if we actually look on Hardcore Trade Calandra League and SSF Calandra, we can actually see a disturbing picture. And this is something I really want to point out just because it is crazy how rare this belt is. On Hardcore Calandra, and this is Trade League, mind you, there are only 6 people with a Mageblood on. If you look at SSF Calandra, not much better in the sense of how many players there are. If we look at Mageblood on SSF Calandra, we have 0.4%. And if you check out SSF Sentinel League, we actually had way more people. And this really gives you kind of a idea of how much rarer this belt is. Just a very big generalization, and it's up to 10 times rarer compared to SSF Sentinel. So 0.4% in SSF Calandra and 4% in SSF Sentinel, and that pretty much means that these belts are insanely overpriced in terms of you're not going to be able to farm for it. So with this method, hopefully you can adopt this playstyle and you'll be able to do some 5 ways without the headhunter and still be able to farm up for it in the shortest amount of time possible, and maybe be able to play some builds that you always dreamed of playing. Now, in order to understand what exactly can we use to replace the headhunter, we have to think of what are the actual best belts out there. And there's pretty much 3 different contenders. There's Replica Headhunter, and Replica Headhunter is actually pretty expensive. It's around 35 divines. But what it allows you to do is you steal Arch Nemesis modifier for magic monsters with a 60-second duration. And so you can see here, 20% chance when you kill a magic monster to gain its modifiers for 60 seconds. Now, this is pretty good because the buffs does last 60 seconds, and you can stack it with Inspired Learning. So you can see here, I actually have one that I tested it out with, and it was 44 divines. Okay, maybe it's a little bit more expensive now, but this does give you a viable alternative, perhaps, even though it is extremely expensive. Now, next up, the next option we have is a synthesized belt with attribute % implicit. And this is actually really, really cheap. We can buy the base of the belt for like 50 chaos, and then we pretty much craft it with attribute essences until we get a high elemental damage with attacks roll. And as you can see here, this is a belt I'm wearing. I pretty much just spam some spite essences on it, and then I ended up getting 55 strength, and then I got 35% elemental damage with attack. So I decided to call it a day. This belt will probably run you around 1 divine or so it's extremely, extremely affordable compared to the Replica Headhunter. Now, next up, I did decide to also try this belt, and it's Torrent Reclamation. This is an old school belt that people used a lot in the past for aura stackers, and it gives you 15% attack speed and 10% more action speed. So you can pretty much think of 10% more action speed as pretty much 10% more damage. And on paper, it seems pretty good. I bought this thing to try out for 2 divines, so it wasn't too expensive. So 45 divines, 2 divines, 1 divine. So what's going to win out? And in order to replace Headhunter, I did get 2 Inspired Learnings. Now, ever since the recent patch, the rares in Legion for 5 ways can no longer spawn God Touched, and it can only have 2 Arch Nemesis modifiers since they actually don't drop any loot. Now, what this means is that only using 2 Inspired Learning, you won't really benefit from having 3. So we did add 2 Inspired Learnings. These things go for around 2.5 Divine, so it's not too crazy. And we put them right here and here. These are the main spots. If you could steal more mods, technically you could put another Inspired Learning here. But some people in chat told me that this was not really needed at all, and it would be just pretty much wasting a jewel socket and a bunch of points. Now, you might be wondering what is actually the best belt, and we have a pretty clear winner. The best belt in terms of value was definitely the Synthesized Implicit Rare belt, around 7.5k to 8k kills. And the belt that we actually ended up using is pretty much just this. The reason why this is so good is we are playing Omni still, and this does give us an incredible amount of damage. So you can see here we have 1771 Omni. Without the belt, we're all the way down to 1400. And it does give us some flat elemental damage, which actually ends up being pretty useful. I think if you put it into the palm, the belt probably gives you around like 25% damage or so, which is incredible. Now, next up, Replica Headhunter was also pretty good. It was around 7.5k, 8k range. And it does give you around 3 buffs at a time, so it's not crazy incredible value. And Torrent Reclamation was definitely the worst belt that I ended up testing, and I only got like 6 to 6.5k kills. Not really sure why it was so bad. I guess action speed doesn't really matter when your character is pretty much going to be standing still the whole time. And in terms of Inspired Learning and how many buffs you actually get, you usually get around 20 buffs, and you can sometimes go up to 25 buffs. So this is pretty nice because that means that a normal Headhunter usually gives you like 35 to 40 buffs or 30. So you're pretty much at around like most of the percentage of power of a Headhunter. And just to give you some idea of what it actually looks like, because the playstyle is pretty important for this case. So as you can see here, what you want to do is you have the person resetting, and the person resetting is also the Aura bot, and you pretty much just stand next to the resetter, and you stand around right here where I'm pointing with my cursor. And with this cursor, you pretty much just draw a circle, and you're shooting around in a circle, and you hope to kill as many mobs as possible. Now, this method is not going to kill that many bosses, however, but it is going to get you the highest amount of mob kills as possible. And that's pretty much all that people really care about. People only care about how many mobs you can kill, because how many mobs you can kill is pretty much directly correlated to how much XP you are getting. So you pretty much stand here. The auras does help out your damage a lot, and you might be wondering how many kills do you actually get this, and if you have any proof of doing this. And this is with 2 Inspired Learning and a Synthesized Belt over here. So you can see this is pretty mundane, right? You're pretty much just shooting around in a circle, and you're able to kill everything because of your projectile speed and chain and everything like that. And you can see here, sometimes even goes up to 24 buffs. But we're nearing the end right here at 19, 9, 8, 7.
Okay, EDU.
So I'm pretty much...
would find a reason to banish it was extremely negative about everything PoE had to offer this league.
Alright, so let's see. I finish it, and then when do I check the incubator? So right now, I check the incubator over here.
100. That's actually not that bad.
So I was actually shocked, right? So we actually got 7,600 in that run without using a Headhunter, which is incredibly good. Most people guarantee like 8 to 9k. So if you're able to provide a service and you slightly undercut, 7.5k, 8k is really, really good, especially if you're not using a Headhunter. And I do think that this is a viable method if you have slightly less currency. Now, you might notice that you have to stand in the same spot the whole time, and that's just how it's going to be. Now, if you want to see what the replica Headhunter looks like, and this is with a replica Headhunter, and you can see here, you can see the buffs. Oh, you can see it for a split second. You generally get not that many buffs compared to using... It's not like replica Headhunter actually gains you that many buffs. So you can see right there, you have 3 buffs. Oh, yeah, I don't really know. This thing always covers it. It's really, really, really annoying. But you see, you can sometimes get up to 24 buffs. But overall, Replica Headhunter didn't really seem that worth it. You generally get like 1 or 2 extra buffs, or 3 sometimes. But overall, you do lose a lot of damage compared to using a Synthesized Belt. And in the end, the Synthesized Belt is also extremely cheap compared to using a Replica Headhunter. So you should probably never really consider Replica Headhunter, and Torrent Reclamation is just a complete disaster. So best way of doing it is to use a Synthesized Implicit Rare Belt. Use 2 Inspired Learnings, and that should be the most budget setup possible. What this means is that you can pretty much start selling 5-way carries without a Headhunter at a much lower price than other people, and still be able to make a lot of money, and it's not like you're really ripping these people off. In fact, in many of these cases, these people will probably be getting a much better value since you're offering a lower price per kill. And that's pretty much the only thing that matters. And most people on Discord do promise around 8 to 9k kills. So you can offer a really, really good value proposition without even using the Headhunter belt and just using Inspired Learnings. However, this does force you to hire an aura bot / resetter. So the person resetting needs to be an aura bot. So in order to entice people to come along, you probably need to just offer it for free for the aura bot person or resetter. And also another problem with this method is that you have to stand still and shoot in a circle to get that many kills. So you kind of are passing out on the fact that you could potentially be getting, what's it called, more kills or more boss kills, because you pretty much just have to do this the whole time. And as you can see, this is not very riveting gameplay. You're literally drawing a circle around your screen over and over and over again, but at least you don't really need to move around. I know a lot of people do like to move around pretty much because it's just more fun and it gives a feeling that you're not just AFKing too in the 5-way. Now, as you can see here, this is around like what people charge. Even for 8.5k kills, they do charge 1 divine per 2 runs. So if you're actually able to get 7.5k kills and you charge 1 divine for 3 runs, the people should be getting a lot better value. And you're still making a lot of money, as 0.4 divine per 5 runs is currently the break-even cost. Now, you might be wondering, how budget is this build? And this build is not like a bare bones budget. This isn't like a typical 1 divine build or 2 divine builds, but there is a huge difference to be made between roughly a 50 divine build than a 180 divine build where you just need the belt in order to even get off the ground. And that is an important distinction. A lot of people don't have that much currency, but getting 50 divines is a completely different story than getting a Headhunter belt. So the most expensive gear is Omniscience, obviously. It's at 15 divines. I didn't really try it out with Solstice Vigil, purely because I think Solstice Vigil is just too bad. It's only 20% buff on a Headhunter and is not good enough. And Omniscience pretty much doubles or 2.5 times your damage. You can buy a budget physical one, and this one you can buy for around 10 divines. I did try to look it up. So you pretty much just type in like 400 PDPS, and you can find one for 8 to 10 divines roughly. And another thing you could possibly do is you could also go Elemental Wand, which could lower the cost of the build by a lot. Now, Explode Chest is something else you can look for. You can pretty much just find one that's like 20% plus to explode. And that's pretty much the only thing I would look for. Anything else is pretty much extra on top. Now, you do need 2 Inspired Learnings to simulate the Headhunter belt. And that costs around 5 divines, 3 large clusters. And if you can't afford the Explode clusters, I pretty much would just go for these ones. Opportunistic, Martial Prowess, and Storm's Hand. And you can see here, this one goes for 2 divines roughly. And there's a lot more up for like 1 divine or 2 divines or so. But you can pretty much spend like 1 to 2 divines on each large cluster. Now, something interesting you may know, as someone pointed it out in a YouTube comment, is I actually forgot to do Uber Lab on this build. So I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. So you do not even need to use a Forbidden Jewel. I would pretty much just not use Focal Point. So Sniper's Mark's not really that big of an issue since you are going for number of mobs killed and not boss killed. So you actually don't even need Forbidden Jewels for the setup. And for the rest of this build, in terms of what you have, I bought these rings for roughly 1.5 to 2.5 divines each. This chest you can purchase for around 4 divines or 5 divines. This helmet, if you just go for a KB, let's see, like 10, and like 10, let's say. Let's see how much this actually is. So this is like, what, 2 to 3 divines with the KB enchant, so that's not too bad. Esh's Mirror is pretty much like, I don't even know, this item is probably like 3 chaos or so. Replica Voidwalkers is probably like 15-20 chaos with the enchant. So overall, every single piece of gear is relatively affordable. This thing is like 1 to 2 chaos. This thing is 2 divines or so, depending on how you craft it. So the only expensive pieces are Explode Chest, Omni, and the Wand, and the large clusters. And that's pretty much, and Inspired Learnings. And that's pretty much all you need. Everything else, CB Jewel is not really worth that much. Mantra of Flames is pretty cheap. This day, Forbidden Jewels you don't actually need. And this is actually something I teched into the build that adds a lot. Since we're going to be standing still the whole time, this thing actually gives you 2 Grasping Vines each second while stationary. And it gives you 2% chance to deal double damage per Grasping Vine. And 1% less damage taken per Grasping Vine. So we actually look at what's going on here. And I don't even think I was doing it here yet. Yeah, I didn't add it in until later on. Well, so you can see here you have these Grasping Vines So once it goes up to 10, you're doing 20% more damage. And that's a pretty crazy amount of more damage. And you also take 10% less damage. So that's just something you can add in. And this day is extremely cheap, right? Oh, it's 8 chaos, 10 chaos. So overall, you can try to increase the budget a little bit more. Watch aside, this is probably very expensive. But you can pretty much be using a Fizz conversion to cold instead of Hatred crit. And you should be perfectly fine when testing it out. So overall, if I had to guess the budget of the build, it's probably around 50 or so divines in order to set this all up and be able to host 5 ways. Now, not using a Headhunter does drastically cut down the cost of the method, but the main problem with the method is it's pretty boring. As you can see here, you're pretty much just, I don't know, I was pretty much looking at chat the whole time. But there is a caveat to this, which is since you're looking at the other screen the whole time, or you can do it on the other screen the whole time, what you could potentially do is you have your left hand free. Since you're only using your right hand to draw circles, you have another monitor. So if I let you imagine what you could be doing when you have your free hand and another monitor, maybe 5 ways could potentially be the most enjoyable experience of your life, if you get what I mean. Now, if you don't want to do something activity like that, you can definitely load up some Netflix and watch a TV show. Or you can watch like HBO or something, or Amazon. I know there's the new Lord of the Rings show, and there's also the new House of Dragon show. So there's a lot of things you can watch. You can make a little bit of money, and you can finally find a build that you can want to play. Now, the main problem with this is going to be another topic in the next video I'm going to be making, which is what exactly would you play? Because right now, this is the biggest issue, I think, for a lot of people with money. Anyone else wanting to play PoE but feel like there's no build worth playing, let me know down in the comments below if you echo the sentiment. But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you find more mirrors, exalted orbs, and mage bloods and divines to me, and see you next time. Bye!